The conference room smelled like expensive leather and the kind of ambition that never sleeps. And Clara Winters had exactly 3 minutes to convince Quinn Owens that his entire 5-year expansion plan was fundamentally flawed. She stood at the head of the polished mahogany table, her laptop open, graphs projected onto the screen behind her. 20 executives stared at her with varying degrees of skepticism. At the far end of the table sat Quinn Owens himself, founder and CEO of Owens Maritime Solutions, a shipping empire worth north of $800 million. He was younger than she had expected, maybe 35, with dark hair that looked like he had been running his hands through it all morning and sharp gray eyes that missed nothing. Clara had been hired as an external consultant 3 weeks ago. Her job was to analyze the company's proposed expansion into Southeast Asian ports. What she had found instead was a disaster waiting to happen. "Mr. Owens, if you proceed with the Jakarta port acquisition at the current terms, you will lose approximately $40 million in the first 18 months, she said, her voice steady despite the way her heart hammered against her ribs. The room went silent. Someone coughed. Quinn leaned back in his chair, those gray eyes fixed on her face. "That is a bold claim, Miss Winters. My team has spent 2 years developing this plan. I know, and the foundation is solid, but the regulatory environment in Indonesia has shifted in the last 6 months. There are new tariff structures that your projections do not account for." She clicked to the next slide, numbers filling the screen. "Additionally, 3 of your proposed local partnerships are with companies that are currently under investigation for customs violations. Association with them will trigger compliance reviews that will delay operations by at least a year." One of the executives, a silver-haired man named Donovan, interrupted. "We have the best legal team in the industry. These concerns are overblown." Clara met his gaze directly. "With respect, your legal team has been focused on American and European maritime law. Southeast Asian regulatory frameworks operate differently. I spent the last 2 weeks on calls with contacts in Jakarta, Singapore, and Manila. The information I am presenting is current as of yesterday." Quinn was still watching her, his expression unreadable. "And you are suggesting we abandon the expansion?" "No. I am suggesting you restructure it. Delay Jakarta by 18 months while you establish a stronger presence in Manila, which has more favorable conditions right now. Use that time to build relationships with different partners in Indonesia, ones who are not currently red-flagged. The same expansion, just resequenced." She could feel the tension in the room like a physical thing. These men had invested years in this plan. She was a 28-year-old consultant who had been here less than a month, telling them they had missed something crucial. Quinn stood up. The room seemed to hold its breath. "Everyone out," he said quietly, "except Miss Winters." The executives filed out, some shooting her sympathetic looks, others glaring. Donovan was the last to leave, closing the door with a pointed click. Clara remained standing, her hands steady on the back of the chair in front of her. She had known this moment would come. She had known that speaking up would either make her career or destroy it. Quinn walked around the table toward her, his hands in the pockets of his tailored suit pants. Up close, she could see faint lines at the corners of his eyes, the shadow of stubble on his jaw. He looked tired. "You were not in the plan," he said. She blinked. "Excuse me. We hired your firm to validate our expansion strategy, not to tear it apart. You were supposed to give us a rubber stamp and a nice report we could show investors." His voice was not angry, just factual. Clara lifted her chin. "Then you hired the wrong person. I do not lie in my reports, Mr. Owens. Not for you, not for anyone." For a long moment he just looked at her, Then, unexpectedly, he smiled. It transformed his entire face, softening the hard edges reaching his eyes. "Good," he said. Because the plan was wrong, she stared at him. "What?" "I have been having doubts for 3 months, little things that did not add up, but everyone kept telling me I was overthinking it, that we had already invested too much to change course." He pulled out the chair next to where she stood and sat down, gesturing for her to do the same. "Show me everything you found, all of it." Clara sat, her mind reeling from the sudden shift. She opened her laptop and began walking him through her research. He listened intently, asking sharp questions, making notes on his phone. As they talked, the winter afternoon light faded outside the windows, and someone brought in coffee that grew cold while they worked. 3 hours later, they had the skeleton of a new plan. Quinn leaned back in his chair, rubbing his eyes. "This is going to be a nightmare to implement. Half my board will fight it." "They will fight harder when they are explaining the $40 million loss to shareholders," Clara pointed out. He laughed, a genuine sound that made something flutter in her chest. "Fair point. Can you stay on for the restructure? I know your contract with us was only for the initial assessment, but I need someone who actually understands what we are walking into." Clara hesitated. Her consulting firm had other projects lined up, but this was the kind of work she had gotten into the business to do, real problem solving, not just validation reports. "I will need to clear it with my boss," she said. "But yes, I can stay." "Good." He stood, extending his hand. "Thank you, Clara, for having the guts to tell me the truth." His hand was warm, his grip firm. She shook it, professional, appropriate. But she noticed the way he looked at her, something in his expression that was not quite all business. She told herself she was imagining it. Over the next 2 months, Clara practically lived at Owens' Maritime Solutions. The restructure was every bit the nightmare Quinn had predicted. The board fought them at every turn. Donovan, the silver-haired executive, seemed to take personal offense at the changes and missed no opportunity to undermine her recommendations in meetings. But Quinn backed her up every single time. He had a way of commanding a room that Clara found fascinating to watch. He never raised his voice, never blustered, but when he spoke, people listened. He was decisive but not impulsive, willing to hear dissenting opinions but firm once he had made a choice. She had worked with a lot of executives in her 5 years as a consultant, and most of them were either tyrants or pushovers. Quinn was neither. They fell into a rhythm. Morning meetings to review progress, afternoon deep dives into specific issues, late evenings troubleshooting problems. Quinn had a corner office with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the harbor, and Clara had claimed the conference table in the corner as her workspace. More nights than she could count, she looked up from her laptop to find him standing at the windows, watching the ships move in and out of port, his silhouette dark against the city lights. "You ever go home?" she asked one night around 9, closing her laptop with a sigh. He turned, that slight smile on his face. "I could ask you the same thing. I am getting paid to be here. So am I, just in a more permanent sense." He walked over to the conference table, loosening his tie. He had discarded his suit jacket hours ago, and his white shirt was rolled up at the sleeves. "Hungry? There is a Thai place that delivers." They had dinner brought in more times than Clara could count, working through problems between bites of pad Thai or green curry. She learned that Quinn had started the company 9 years ago with money from a settlement after his father, a merchant marine, had died in a shipping accident. He had been 26, fresh out of business school, and determined to build something safer, better, more ethical than the company that had gotten his father killed. "Is that why you cared when I pointed out the compliance issues?" Clara asked one night, chopsticks paused halfway to her mouth. Because ethics actually matter to you. Quinn looked at her across the scattered takeout containers. My father died because a shipping company cut corners on safety to save money. They had been cited for violations before, but they had good lawyers and better connections, so nothing ever stuck. I will not build a company like that, I cannot. The raw honesty in his voice made her chest tight. She put down her chopsticks. I am sorry about your father. It was a long time ago, but his eyes said it still hurt. He would have liked you, I think. He did not trust people who told him what he wanted to hear. He said the truth might sting, but lies will kill you. Smart man. The smartest I ever knew. There were moments like that, scattered through the long weeks. Moments where the conversation drifted from business into something more personal. Clara learned that Quinn was an only child, that his mother had remarried and was happy in Florida, that he played basketball twice a week with college friends to stay sane. Quinn learned that Clara had grown up in Seattle, that she had put herself through college and graduate school, that she had a younger brother who was a marine biologist, and a cat named Pepper who was probably furious with her for all the late nights. You should bring Pepper to the office, Quinn said. I am pretty sure you spend more time here than at your apartment anyway, Clara laughed. Pepper hates everyone but me. She would probably terrorize your entire staff. I think I could handle a cat. You have clearly never met Pepper. The restructure came together piece by piece. Clara negotiated with new partners in Manila, coordinated with legal teams across 3 countries, and built financial models that proved the revised plan was not just safer but more profitable in the long term. The board gradually came around, though Donovan remained stubbornly opposed. He is afraid you make him look incompetent, Quinn said one afternoon after a particularly contentious board meeting. I do not care about making anyone look incompetent, Clara said, frustrated. I care about making this work. I know. That is why you are good at your job. She glanced at him. They were in his office, the door closed, the rest of the floor mostly empty as the workday wound down. He was standing close, closer than was strictly necessary, and she was suddenly very aware of him. The way he smelled like expensive cologne and coffee. The way his shirt stretched across his shoulders. The way he was looking at her like she was the only person in the world. Quinn, she said softly. He stepped back immediately, running a hand through his hair. Sorry, I should not. We are working together. It is inappropriate. Clara's heart was doing something complicated in her chest. It is. Right, of course. He turned away, putting more distance between them. We should focus on the Manila contracts. They did not talk about it, but the awareness was there now, humming between them like an electric current. Clara caught herself watching him in meetings, noticing the way he gestured when he was making a point, the way his eyes crinkled when something amused him. She noticed how often he found excuses to stop by the conference table where she worked, asking questions he probably already knew the answers to. This was dangerous. She was a consultant. This was a temporary assignment. Getting involved with a client, especially a CEO client, was a spectacularly bad idea on every professional level. But when she looked at Quinn, all those logical reasons seemed to fade into background noise. 3 months into the restructure, her boss called her back to the main office for a meeting. Clara took the train downtown, feeling oddly disoriented to be away from Owens' Maritime Solutions. In her boss's office, she learned that the firm had another major project starting, a 6-month engagement with a tech company in San Francisco. You are our best strategic consultant, her boss, Margaret, said. She was a sharp woman in her 50s who had built the consulting firm from nothing. They specifically requested you. When would I start? 2 weeks. I know you are still wrapping up the Owens project, but Quinn Owens has already confirmed that the major restructure decisions are made. You can hand off the implementation oversight to James." Clara felt something sink in her stomach. James does not know this project like I do. Then you have 2 weeks to get him up to speed. Margaret gave her a knowing look. This is a huge opportunity, Clara. The San Francisco project could make you a partner in this firm. Do not let attachment to one client hold you back. Attachment. Was that what Margaret saw? Was it that obvious? Clara went back to Quinn's office that afternoon with a sick feeling in her chest. She found him on a call, but he waved her in, gesturing to the chair across from his desk. She sat, watching him negotiate something about fuel contracts, firm but fair in a way that would probably make the person on the other end of the line feel like they had gotten a good deal. When he hung up, he looked at her, and his expression immediately shifted. "What is wrong?" "My firm is pulling me off the project. They have another client who wants me. I have 2 weeks to transition everything to another consultant." Quinn went very still. 2 weeks. The major decisions are done. James can handle the implementation oversight. He is good at that kind of thing. James does not know this project. I will get him up to speed. Quinn stood up, walked to the windows, his back to her. His shoulders were tense. "What if I do not want you to go?" Clara's breath caught. "Quinn, what if I hire you directly, not through the consulting firm? As a full-time executive here?" He turned to face her. "I have been thinking about creating a VP of Strategic Development position. You would be perfect for it. That is, you cannot just create a position because you do not want me to leave. I can do whatever I want. I am the CEO." He said it with a slight smile, but his eyes were serious. "I am not asking you to stay just because you are good at your job, Clara, though you are. I am asking you to stay because somewhere in the last 3 months, I started looking forward to coming to work every morning, and the reason for that is you." Her heart was pounding. "We work together. It would be complicated. It is already complicated." He crossed the room, stopping in front of her chair. "You were not in the plan. When I hired your firm, I expected a consultant who would spend a few weeks here, give me a report, and leave. I did not expect you. I did not expect someone who would challenge me and push back and make me rethink everything I thought I knew. I did not expect to fall for someone so completely that the idea of you leaving makes me want to throw things." Clara stood up, bringing them face to face. "You are falling for me. I have been falling for you since the first day you told me my plan was wrong and refused to back down." His hand came up, hesitating near her face, and she closed the distance, leaning into his touch. His palm was warm against her cheek. "Stay, please. We will figure out the complicated parts." She should say no. She should maintain professional boundaries and take the San Francisco job, and let this be a story she told herself about the CEO she almost fell for. But when she looked at Quinn, at the hope and vulnerability in his eyes, she knew there was only one answer she wanted to give. "Okay," she whispered. "I will stay." He kissed her then, his hand sliding into her hair, and it was nothing like the professional, restrained relationship they had been maintaining. It was urgent and real and felt like something that had been building for months. Clara's hands found the front of his shirt, holding on, and when they finally broke apart they were both breathing hard. "That was very unprofessional," she said, but she was smiling. "Fire me," he said, and kissed her again. The next 2 weeks were a whirlwind. Clara turned down the San Francisco project and gave her notice at the consulting firm. Margaret was not pleased, but she was professional about it, even if she did mutter something about Clara making emotional decisions. Maybe she was. But standing in Quinn's office, negotiating the terms of her new position while he looked at her like she was the best thing that had ever happened to him, Clara could not bring herself to care. They kept the relationship quiet at first, wanting to establish Clara's new role before adding that complication. She moved into a proper office, hired a small team, and dove into planning the company's long-term strategic development. The Manila expansion was progressing smoothly, and she was already identifying the next opportunities for growth. But the best part of every day was still the time she spent with Quinn. They had lunch together most days, working meetings that were at least 50% actual work. They stayed late together, ordering takeout and talking about everything and nothing. And when the office was empty, Quinn would pull her into his arms and kiss her like he had been waiting all day for it, which he told her he had. "I am supposed to be focused on board meetings and contract negotiations," he said one evening, his forehead resting against hers. "Instead, I spend half my time thinking about the way you bite your lip when you are analyzing data. That is a very specific thing to think about." "You are very distracting." Clara laughed, pulling him closer. "You are not so easy to ignore yourself." 3 months after she officially joined Owens Maritime Solutions, they went public with their relationship. Quinn called a meeting with his senior leadership team and told them directly that he and Clara were together, and that anyone who had a problem with it could bring their concerns to him personally. No one did. Or if they did, they were smart enough to keep it quiet. Donovan finally retired, which everyone agreed was probably for the best. The board approved the Manila expansion, and the first phase launched ahead of schedule and under budget. Clara's strategic development team grew, and Quinn started talking about expansion into South America. But more than the professional success, Clara found herself settling into a life she had not known she wanted. She and Quinn got an apartment together overlooking the water, close enough to walk to the office. Pepper grudgingly accepted Quinn's presence, though she still hissed at him if he took Clara's spot on the couch. Quinn's basketball friends adopted Clara into their group, and she found herself at sports bars on Tuesday nights, drinking beer and learning more than she ever wanted to know about college basketball. She met Quinn's mother, who flew up from Florida, and spent a weekend interrogating Clara about her intentions and background, before finally declaring that she approved. "He has been in love with you since about week 2, his mother, Patricia, told Clara over lunch while Quinn was taking a work call. "He called me and said he had met someone interesting, and I knew. That boy has never called anyone interesting in his life." Clara felt her cheeks heat. "I did not realize it that early. When did you know?" "Honestly, the day I told him his plan was wrong and he listened instead of getting defensive. I think I fell a little bit in love with him right then." Patricia smiled. "His father was like that, confident enough to admit when he was wrong. It is a rare quality." That night, Clara told Quinn what his mother had said. They were on the couch in their apartment, her feet in his lap, Pepper purring on the armrest. "Week 2 is an exaggeration," Quinn said, but he was grinning. "It was at least week 3. She threw a pillow at him. "You are impossible." He caught the pillow and tossed it aside, pulling her into his lap instead. "I am in love with you. Is that a problem?" Her breath caught. They had not said those words yet, had been dancing around them for months. "No," she said softly, "because I am in love with you too." He kissed her, slow and sweet, and Pepper yowled in protest at being jostled. They got engaged on a Saturday morning 8 months after Clara had joined the company. There was no elaborate proposal, no public spectacle. Quinn woke her up early, which she hated, and dragged her down to the harbor where one of their ships was docked. "Why are we here?" she asked, yawning, her hair still messy from sleep. "Because I wanted to show you something." He led her up the gangway onto the ship, which was quiet in the early morning. They climbed to the bridge, and Quinn pointed to the name painted on the console, Clara M. Winters. She stared at it, her throat tight. You named a ship after me. You saved this company. You saved me from making a massive mistake. And then you stayed, even though it was complicated and messy and probably a bad idea professionally. He turned her to face him, his hands gentle on her shoulders. You were not in the plan, Clara. But you are the best thing that ever happened to me, and I cannot imagine my life without you in it. He pulled a ring box from his pocket, opening it to reveal a simple diamond on a platinum band. Marry me. Be my partner in everything. Help me build this company into something we can be proud of. Grow old with me and tell me when my plans are wrong. Clara was crying, laughing, nodding all at once. Yes, yes, of course, yes. He slipped the ring on her finger, and she kissed him there on the bridge of a ship named after her, with the morning sun rising over the harbor. They got married 6 months later in a ceremony on the waterfront. It was small, just family and close friends, exactly the way they both wanted. Quinn's mother cried through the entire ceremony. Clara's brother gave a speech about how Quinn was punching above his weight and should never forget it. Quinn's basketball friends started a toast that got increasingly rowdy until Clara's best friend from graduate school cut them off. But the best moment was when Quinn took her hand during their first dance and whispered, "Thank you for telling me the plan was wrong." She smiled up at him. "Thank you for listening." They honeymooned in Manila, combining pleasure with business as they toured the new port facilities and met with local partners. But mostly they explored the city, ate incredible food, and stayed in a hotel with an ocean view where they could forget about work and just be together. Back home, life settled into a new rhythm. Clara's strategic development division became one of the most valuable parts of Owens' Maritime Solutions. They expanded into South America, then into new shipping technologies, always with Clara and Quinn working as a team to evaluate risks and opportunities. 2 years after the wedding, Clara discovered she was pregnant. She told Quinn at the office, unable to wait until they got home. He was in a meeting with 3 executives when she knocked on the door, and something in her face must have given it away because he immediately stood up. "We need to reschedule," he told the executives, already walking toward her. "Quinn, you cannot just kick us out," one of them protested. "Yes, I can. I am the CEO. Out." When they were alone, he took her hands. "What is it?" "I am pregnant," she said, and watched his face transform with joy. He picked her up and spun her around, and she laughed, holding onto his shoulders. "We are having a baby. We are having an actual baby." "That is generally what pregnant means, yes. I am going to be a father. You are going to be a mother." He set her down carefully, like she was made of glass. "Should you be working? You need to sit down. Are you feeling okay?" "Quinn, breathe. I am fine. It is extremely early. I just found out this morning." But he was already planning. She could see it in his eyes. "We need to convert the spare room. And look into daycares. Do we need to get on waiting lists? I have heard the good ones have waiting lists, and we should talk to Patricia. She will have advice." Clara kissed him to stop the flow of words. "We have time. 7.5 months, in fact. We will figure it all out." They did figure it out together. Quinn became even more protective than usual, which Clara found both annoying and endearing. He insisted on carrying anything heavier than a laptop. He researched pregnancy nutrition with the same intensity he applied to business deals. He went to every doctor's appointment, holding her hand and asking detailed questions that made their obstetrician laugh. When Clara's pregnancy started to show, she worried about how it would affect her credibility at work. But if anything, the company rallied around them. Her team threw her a surprise baby shower in the main conference room. The board members sent gifts. Even the typically reserved legal department contributed to a massive pile of baby presents. "They love you," Quinn said, watching her open another gift bag filled with tiny clothes. Everyone here knows what you have done for this company. We did it together, she corrected. We did. But you were the one who had the courage to tell me the truth when no one else would. Everything else built from that. Their daughter was born on a sunny afternoon in May. They named her Emma Patricia Owens, and she was perfect. Tiny and pink with a surprising amount of dark hair and her father's gray eyes. Quinn held her for the first time with tears streaming down his face. "Hi, Emma. I am your dad. I am going to try really hard not to mess this up." "You are not going to mess it up," Clara said from the hospital bed, exhausted and happy. "How do you know? Because you listen. You adapt. You admit when you are wrong. You are going to be an amazing father." He was. Clara watched him learn to change diapers and master the art of the bottle feeding and walk the floors at 3 in the morning when Emma could not sleep. He worked from home more, taking video calls with a baby monitor next to his laptop. The company adjusted. Clara came back from maternity leave part-time at first, then gradually increased her hours as they found their rhythm. Emma grew. She learned to crawl, then walk, then run. She had Quinn's determination and Clara's analytical mind, a combination that was both impressive and occasionally exhausting. On Emma's second birthday, the family gathered at the apartment for a small party. Patricia had flown up from Florida. Clara's brother was there with his girlfriend. Quinn's basketball friends came with their families. It was loud and chaotic and exactly right. That night, after everyone had left and Emma was asleep, Clara and Quinn sat on their balcony overlooking the harbor. She could see the lights of the ships moving in and out of port, including the Clara Winters, which was scheduled to sail in the morning. "You ever think about that first day?" Quinn asked, his arm around her shoulders. "When you told the entire board that our plan was a disaster," Clara laughed softly, "I thought I was ending my career. I thought you might be ending mine too. But then I realized you were right, and keeping you around was the smartest decision I ever made." "Second smartest," she corrected. "The smartest was proposing." "Fair point." He kissed the top of her head. "You know what I have been thinking about?" "What?" "Another baby." Emma could use a sibling. Clara tilted her head to look up at him. "Are you asking or telling?" "Asking. Always asking. You are the strategic planner. Does another baby fit in the plan?" She thought about it, about their life, about the company they had built together, about the family they were creating. Nothing about their relationship had been planned. She was supposed to be a temporary consultant. He was supposed to be a client. They were supposed to maintain professional boundaries, but the best things in her life were the unplanned ones. "The plan is overrated," she said, and kissed him. Their son was born 18 months later. They named him Jack, and he was as different from Emma as night from day. Where she was serious and observant, he was all energy and noise and laughter. Together, they filled the apartment with chaos and joy. Clara cut back her hours further, moving into a part-time executive role that let her focus on major strategic decisions while delegating daily operations. Quinn did the same, bringing in a chief operating officer to handle the parts of the business that did not need his direct attention. They both wanted to be present for their children in a way Quinn's father had never gotten the chance to be. Owens' Maritime Solutions continued to grow, but it was no longer the center of their universe. It was important, but it was not everything. Emma started kindergarten. Jack learned to walk by chasing after his sister. Pepper grew old and was eventually joined by a puppy that the children named Captain. The apartment became too small, and they bought a house with a yard and enough space for a family. On their 10th wedding anniversary, Quinn took Clara back to the ship named after her. It was in port for maintenance, and they stood on the bridge just like they had the day he proposed. "Feeling nostalgic?" she asked, leaning against him. "Just grateful." You changed my life, Clara. You made me realize that the best things are the ones you do not see coming." She turned in his arms, looking up at the man she loved. He had gray in his hair now, lines around his eyes, but he was still the same person who had listened to her on that first day, who had been brave enough to admit his plan was wrong. "You were not in my plan either," she said. "I was supposed to be focused on my career, building partnerships, making a name for myself in consulting. Falling in love with a client was not part of the strategy. Regret it, not for a second." He kissed her, sweet and familiar, a kiss that held 10 years of partnership and love and laughter. Below them, the harbor lights reflected on the water, ships moving in their careful patterns, heading out to sea or coming home. That night they lay in bed while the house settled around them. Emma and Jack were asleep down the hall. Captain was snoring at the foot of the bed. Outside, the city lights glowed against the dark sky. "You remember what you said to me that first day?" Clara asked, her head on Quinn's chest. "In the conference room after you kicked everyone else out." "I said you were not in the plan. And I thought you were going to fire me." Quinn's laugh rumbled under her ear. "I was never going to fire you. From the moment you stood up there and told me I was about to lose $40 million, I knew you were exactly what I needed." "Professionally or personally?" "Both. They turned out to be the same thing," Clara smiled in the darkness. "The plan was wrong. The plan was perfect. I just did not know it yet." His arms tightened around her. "You were always the plan, Clara. I just had to be smart enough to realize it." She fell asleep like that, held safe in the arms of the man who had listened when she told him the truth, who had changed his course when the evidence demanded it, who had built a life with her that was better than any plan they could have designed. Some years later, Emma came home from school with a career day assignment. She was supposed to interview someone about their job and present it to her class. "I want to interview both of you," she announced at dinner. Jack was 7 now, more interested in his chicken nuggets than career day. "About how you work together." So they sat at the kitchen table after the dishes were cleared, and Emma asked them questions with the seriousness of a 10-year-old who took school projects very seriously. "How did you decide to work together?" she asked, pencil poised over her notebook. Clara and Quinn exchanged a glance. "Your mother saved me from making a very expensive mistake," Quinn said. "She was hired to check my work, and she was brave enough to tell me when I got something wrong. And then what happened? Then I asked her to help me fix it. And she was good at it, so I asked her to stay, and we kept working together. And then you got married, eventually, yes." Emma made a note. "So the lesson is that you should listen when someone tells you that you are wrong," Clara laughed. "That is a pretty good lesson, actually. And you should be brave enough to tell the truth even when people might not like it," Quinn added. "Your mom was hired to agree with me, but she did not. She told me the truth instead, even though it was risky." Emma considered this. "That is like when I told my teacher that she made a mistake on the math problem, and she got mad at first, but then she checked and I was right." "Exactly like that," Clara said. For her presentation, Emma made a poster that said, "My parents are a team," and filled it with pictures of them at work and at home. She explained to her class that her dad ran a shipping company and her mom helped plan where the ships should go, and that they made decisions together. The teacher sent home a note saying Emma had done an excellent job and that it was clear she came from a family that valued partnership and collaboration. "We are doing something right," Quinn said, reading the note. "We are doing a lot of things right." Jack decided he wanted to work with ships when he grew up, like his dad. Emma declared that she wanted to start her own company and change the world. Clara and Quinn supported both dreams, knowing that the children would find their own paths eventually. The company continued to thrive. Clara's strategic development division had become essential to every major decision Owens' Maritime Solutions made. They had expanded to 14 countries, employed over 5,000 people, and were widely respected in the industry for ethical practices and innovation. But Quinn never forgot what had brought them to this point. At every company meeting, he told the story of the consultant who had stood up in front of the board and told him his plan was wrong. He told it to new employees during orientation. He told it to potential partners. He told it at industry conferences. "The best decision I ever made was listening," he always said. And the second best decision was keeping her around. Clara usually rolled her eyes at this, but privately she was proud of what they had built together. Not just the company, but the life, the family, the partnership. They grew older together. Emma went off to college, then Jack. The house got quieter. Pepper had long since passed, followed eventually by Captain. They got a new dog, a rescue named Admiral who had 3 legs and a massive personality. Quinn's hair went fully gray. Clara found her first gray hairs and decided she liked them. They both slowed down at work, transitioning more responsibilities to the next generation of leadership. Clara published a book on strategic business development that became required reading in MBA programs. Quinn was invited to join boards and advisory panels, though he turned down most of them. "I only want one partner," he told Clara. "I am not interested in working with anyone else." On their 25th wedding anniversary, their children threw them a surprise party. Emma had flown in from Seattle, where she was running her own consulting firm. Jack came from Singapore, where he was working for a marine engineering company. Patricia was there, older but still sharp, proud of the family they had built. The party was at the company headquarters, in the same conference room where Clara had first presented her findings. Someone had put up old photos, including one from that first day, Clara standing at the head of the table with her laptop open, Quinn at the far end watching her. "You can see it even then," Emma said, pointing at the photo. "The way Dad is looking at you, he was already in love." Clara studied the photo. She had been so nervous that day, so focused on making her case. She had not noticed the way Quinn was watching her, but Emma was right. It was there in his expression, interest and respect, and the beginning of something deeper. "I did not see it," she admitted. "He did," Patricia said, coming up beside them. "He called me that night and said he had met someone who challenged him. I knew then it was serious. That boy had been waiting his whole life for someone brave enough to tell him the truth." The party went late. People told stories, made toasts, laughed about the early days when Clara and Quinn had tried to keep their relationship secret, and everyone had known anyway. When it was finally just the two of them, late at night in the office that had been the center of so much of their life together, Quinn pulled Clara into his arms. 25 years, he said. Best quarter century of my life. Only a quarter century. You are planning on sticking around longer, I hope. At least another 50 years. I have plans, Clara laughed. I thought we established that plans do not always work out. This one will, because it is simple. Wake up next to you, work with you, grow old with you, love you. That is the whole plan, and it has never steered me wrong. She kissed him there in the office where so much of their story had unfolded. Outside the windows, the harbor lights reflected on the water, ships moving in their eternal patterns. Somewhere out there, the Clara M. Winters was sailing, carrying goods across the ocean, a reminder of a partnership that had started with hard truths and grown into something beautiful. You are not in the plan, Quinn whispered against her lips, echoing the words he had said so many years ago. Clara smiled. The plan was wrong. The plan was perfect. I just did not know it yet. And standing there in each other's arms, 25 years into a partnership that had begun with a consultant brave enough to speak the truth, and a CEO wise enough to listen. They both knew he was right. The years continued to pass gently. Clara and Quinn stepped back from daily operations entirely, maintaining positions on the board but leaving the running of the company to the talented team they had built. Emma's consulting firm grew, and she often called her mother for advice, which Clara found both touching and amusing. Jack married a woman he met in Singapore, a marine biologist who reminded Clara a bit of herself, pragmatic and unafraid to speak her mind. Grandchildren arrived. First Emma's daughter, Sophie, then Jack's twin boys, Daniel and Michael. Clara and Quinn became the kind of grandparents who spoiled shamelessly and then handed the kids back to their parents. "We earned this," Quinn said, watching 3-year-old Sophie demand another cookie. "You are creating a monster," Emma warned. "That is what grandparents do," Patricia said. She was in her 80s now, slower but still present for every important moment. The shipping industry continued to evolve, and Owens' Maritime solutions evolved with it. The next generation of leadership took the company in new directions, investing in green technologies and sustainable shipping practices. Clara and Quinn watched with pride as their life's work grew beyond them. On a quiet Saturday morning when they were both in their late 60s, Clara woke to find Quinn already up, standing at the window of their bedroom. The house was silent. No children, no grandchildren, just the two of them. "Cannot sleep?" she asked. He turned, smiling. "Just thinking. I got an email yesterday. The Clara M. Winters is being retired. She has been in service for 35 years. That is a good run for a cargo ship." Clara got out of bed, wrapping a robe around herself and joining him at the window, feeling sentimental about a ship. Feeling sentimental about everything that ship represents. The day I showed you that name, the day I asked you to marry me, the life we built. He put his arm around her. "Do you ever think about how different things would have been if you had just given me the report I wanted? If you had validated the plan instead of telling me the truth? Sometimes. I would have finished the consulting job, moved on to the next client, never seen you again. I would have lost $40 million, probably gotten voted out by the board, and spent the rest of my life wondering what went wrong." They stood together in comfortable silence, watching the morning light grow stronger over the water. "I am glad I told you the truth," Clara said finally. "I am glad I listened." It was a simple exchange, but it held everything. 30-some years of partnership, of building a company and a family together, of navigating successes and setbacks as a team, of loving each other through all of it. They lived many more years together, good years full of grandchildren and travel and quiet mornings over coffee. They watched their children succeed in their own careers. They celebrated as Owens Maritime Solutions marked its 50th anniversary, still going strong under new leadership. And through it all, they remained partners. When Quinn's health began to fail, Clara was there, holding his hand through doctor's appointments and treatments. When Clara fell and broke her hip, Quinn was there, patient and caring through the long recovery. They grew old the way they had grown everything else, together. One evening, very late in their lives, they sat on the porch of their house watching the sunset. Emma and Jack were there with their families. The grandchildren were playing in the yard. Patricia had passed a few years before, but her presence was still felt in the stories they told and the lessons she had taught them. "Did we do okay?" Quinn asked quietly, his hand holding Clara's. She knew what he meant. Not the company, not the money or the success. The life. The family. The choices they had made. "We did better than okay," she said. "We built something real, because you told me the truth, because you listened." Their children overheard this exchange as they had heard variations of it their whole lives. Emma and Jack exchanged a smile. Their children might find it repetitive, This constant returning to the story of how their parents met, how their mother had challenged their father, how that moment had changed everything. But to Clara and Quinn, it never got old. It was their foundation story, the moment when their lives had diverged from the expected path and found something better. "Tell it again," Sophie asked, coming up to sit at her grandmother's feet. She was in college now, studying business, the same combination of analytical thinking and courage that Clara had embodied. So Clara told it again, the story of the conference room and the wrong plan and the CEO who had been smart enough to listen. Quinn added details, laughing about his own stubbornness, marveling at Clara's bravery. And watching her granddaughter listen with rapt attention, Clara thought about the unexpected paths life could take. About how a consulting job she almost had not taken had led to a confrontation she almost had not had the courage to start. About how that confrontation had led to everything else. The career, the marriage, the children, the grandchildren, the life full of love and purpose and partnership. The plan was wrong, she concluded, the way she always did. The plan was perfect, Quinn corrected gently, the way he always did. We just did not know it yet. And in the golden evening light, surrounded by the family they had built, and the life they had created from that one moment of truth-telling and truth-hearing, Clara could not argue with that. They had many more evenings like that, surrounded by family, telling stories, building memories. And when the time came, as it eventually must for everyone, they went peacefully, knowing they had lived fully and loved completely. At the memorial service, Emma stood up to speak about her parents. She told the story everyone knew about the consultant and the CEO, about the wrong plan and the right choice, but she added her own perspective. "My parents taught me that the best partnerships are built on honesty," she said. "On the courage to speak hard truths and the wisdom to hear them. They showed me that love is not just romance, it is also respect and collaboration and growing together. They were not perfect, but they were perfect for each other." Jack spoke too about watching his father learn to be vulnerable, about seeing his mother balance strength with compassion, about the example they had set of what it meant to be true partners in every sense. The grandchildren shared their memories. The company sent representatives who spoke about the legacy Clara and Quinn had left, not just in business practices, but in the culture of integrity and innovation they had instilled. And later, when the service was over and the family gathered at the house, they found letters that Clara and Quinn had written, one for each child and grandchild. Personal messages full of love and advice and encouragement. Emma's letter included a line that made her cry. "Be brave enough to tell the truth, even when it is hard. The right people will listen, and they are the only ones who matter." Jack's letter said, "Find a partner who challenges you to be better. Build something together that neither of you could have built alone." Sophie's letter, which she would treasure her whole life, said, "Your grandmother changed my life by telling me I was wrong. Never be afraid to speak up when you see a better way." The world needs people brave enough to challenge the status quo. And so the legacy continued. The company that Clara had saved and then helped build endured. The family that she and Quinn had created thrived. The lessons they had taught, about honesty and partnership and love, passed down through generations. Years later, when Sophie was leading her own company and facing a difficult decision, she thought about her grandparents, about Clara standing in that conference room, choosing truth over safety, about Quinn listening instead of defending, about how that moment had rippled out to touch so many lives. She made the hard choice, the honest choice, the brave choice, and she thought with gratitude about the grandmother who had shown her how. The story of Clara and Quinn became part of the family mythology, told and retold, a reminder that the best things in life often come from unexpected places. That plans are important, but flexibility is essential. That love is built on a foundation of respect and honesty. That partnerships, whether in business or in life, require both courage and wisdom. The Clara M. Winters, though retired from service, was preserved and eventually became part of a maritime museum. The plaque beside it told the story of the ship and the woman it was named for, the consultant who had saved a company and married the CEO. And sometimes, on quiet mornings, visitors to the museum would stand beside that ship and imagine the moment when a brave woman told a powerful man that his plan was wrong, and he listened, and everything changed. It was a good story, a true story. A love story that started with hard truths and grew into something beautiful that lasted a lifetime and beyond. And in the end, that was the greatest plan of all.